Hi there, I wanted to talk a little bit about overwhelm. And first thing I want to say is my heart goes out to everyone in the world. We're dealing with a lot right now because of the coronavirus, and it's a really big deal. And some people are really struggling and losing loved ones, and this is, of course, a tragedy. And what I want to talk about is acute versus chronic overwhelm. In the teachings of Clear and Open in my business, I've been speaking out about what I call chronic overwhelm, that I'll define in a moment, ever since about 2006 when I first started to see what it did to people. And typically, when we think of the word overwhelm, we think of a sudden situation, like a fire or someone you love is sick or injured. Something happens and it's a situational kind of event. And that's not what I mean when I talk about chronic overwhelm. Chronic overwhelm is a sort of low to moderate, constant, not dependent on outside situations kind of overwhelm. So, for example, in the news a lot these days, you hear that 40%, I think of Americans, 40% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. And so, with the economic impact of the coronavirus, that obviously is going to have a really severe impact on those people. So those people are going to be in acute overwhelm because of the economic impact right now and the amount of layoffs and closures and all that. But what I would say is people like that were already by definition in chronic overwhelm, because if you're living paycheck to paycheck, that is, and it's more subtle to see and to understand, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, you're in a mindset that is more survival, and it creates low levels of stress. And I've seen in my own work, working with people, what I've seen is when people are operating in chronic overwhelm, it makes them less intelligent, less skilled, less aware, because it sort of makes intuitive sense if you think about it. When our very existence, our ability to put food on the table is an issue to any degree, and there's just a feeling of a lack of safety, it kind of narrows the perception, it narrows the awareness of people, and it just changes our state. It's sort of like when you're really, really hungry, you can't concentrate as well, you can't critically think as well. It's like that. Or very, very tired. It's the same kind of thing. Think Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If your basic needs are not being met, then those higher level, long-term planning, thinking kind of activities and decision making is going to be impaired. So I don't want this to come from an "I told you so" place, but I really don't. What I'm wanting to say is, I don't want to say "but I told you so." What I'm wanting to say is, notice in yourself and in the community and in the economy at large how much of the difficulty we're experiencing, the acute overwhelm, is because we were already, as a society, in a state of chronic overwhelm. Too busy, not saying no to enough projects, overextending credit, not having emergency supplies, living paycheck to paycheck. It can show up in lots of different ways. But it's just like like in manufacturing, no manufacturer in their right mind runs the factory at 100% capacity. The ideal, depending on the factory, is, like 85 to 90%. It depends on the industry. And the reason they do that is because you have to allow for things to go wrong or to arise. Suddenly a customer needs a rush order. Okay, so you've got 10% of capacity to absorb that. And chronic overwhelm is basically where we artificially put ourselves at 100% capacity through the consuming of media or through the consuming of doings and spending, or it's just part of the consumer culture and our inability to be still and just have space and not need to be doing something all the time, because that's really underneath in many ways what the chronic overwhelm is about. So for what that's worth, we're going to get through this. I wish you well, to the people watching this. And acute overwhelm is difficult to manage. It's even more difficult to manage if you started out in chronic overwhelm. So when we do get through this, and we will, I would say when the sun is shining, make the hay, which is getting out of chronic overwhelm and being prepared for something like this to happen again. because it very likely will. I wish you well. Thanks for watching.